All right, here's a quick video explaining what my services are doing smart home technology with CWB Systems. So basically, this is kind of the spiel, I guess I would give to a new customer when I walked into their house. And a lot of the stuff that I provide as a service and products that I provide, you can find on your own. You can do all of it, but it's, I think, putting it all together and making sure it's going to work right is where I come into play. So on the back of my business cards, I basically list out all my services, and this is a quick explanation. So starting with AV, which is short for audio video, very vague, very broad, but it just gives people an idea that I'm not an electrician, I'm not a plumber, I'm working with audio video stuff, as well as a lot of stuff beyond that. So the next thing down the line is lighting. So now what that means again is I sell different products, lighting fixtures and stuff like that. I work with electricians to get things installed, but most importantly I do lighting automation, would be more accurately described. So you can do lighting automation with a lot of different things. They make these smart light bulbs that work with an app. They make different dimmers, Lutron. Now if you have a house that has 150 devices, however, which is the type of houses that I work in, you need a control system. So Lutron or Crestron is what I sell. And these are again, you can have everything. All of the wires in a new constructed house can be run down to electrical panels, and then you just have keypads basically in the locations where they need to be for code, even whenever you walk in and out of a room. So those there's price savings on wire doing it that way. Actually, probably more to home run everything as opposed to doing a traditional wired system, but mostly I'm doing actually where I'm replacing existing lighting systems, with smart RF controlled devices. So you can do some of this on your own with the Lutron Cassetta system. You can buy that at Home Depot or online. Again, I mentioned the smart light bulbs and all of that. So, but when you get to a much larger house, you really kind of need Lutron Radio Rot 3 is the latest there, or HomeWorks QS when you have over 200 devices. So this is, again, I'm just scratching the surface of this, but if you want to have the ability to push a scene and say entertain, dinner time, and all the lights go to a certain level, it's very luxurious to have, and it's kind of practical as well. In very large houses, you don't want to run around and hitting switches everywhere to turn on and off lights. When you leave the house or when you go to bed, you can push one button, everything turns off, and you can trust that it's done. There's some savings there with electric to have things go off, motion, occupancy sensors to make sure lights go off when nobody's in the room. And another important one too is security based, to have your house look like it's actually lived in when you're not there. Next down the line too would be shades. So again, we're just talking about the back of my business card, a quick list of these services that I do. Motorized shades, again, are very, very nice to have, very luxurious, and they're actually in the same category as a lighting control as a lighting control system, because the biggest light we have is the sun. And when you have bedrooms and different areas, you want to be able to control the light exposure from the sun in those rooms. Some houses have very expensive artwork that we can't have the sun shining on it. These things can be put on timers as well, and can also be modified to be look as if the house is lived in again when you're on vacation. So all kinds of fabrics. You have roller shades, you have Roman shades, you have drapes that can close in from the sides. So there's a lot of options there. Shades are not inexpensive. They depending on the material, the size of the window, all that stuff, there's a lot of considerations there, and it can range anywhere from 800 on the low end up to 2,000 per window, depending on the size and the material and all that. So but they're very nice to have, and a good thing, even if you're not doing shades but you're running wires in a house, you want to put some 18-2 gauge wire just to provide constant power to a shade motor in the corner of the window. You can build shades into a soffit, so you don't really see anything except for the material that just comes down. What else? You can do, there's battery operated shades now, which work very well. Rechargeable ones with lithium ion. They need some kind of a control system, so Lutron or Crestron, again, is what I use. You can control the shades with a keypad press in a wall or an app. So yeah, motorized shades, very cool. not cheap, but at minimum, if you're wiring a house, you probably want to think about that in the big areas like bedrooms, maybe the main living room, family room, to have some shades there, and then some of the guest rooms or whatever, you might just opt to do a manual shade that can still match the motorized shades that you have. So that is shades. One more quick thing about that too. There's you have blackout shades and you have sheer shades. So sheer let a certain amount of light in, and a blackout shade is meant to be completely blacked out. You can actually have two shades in one window. So you push one, and a blackout shade comes down, and behind that or in front of it, a sheer shade would come down. So you could have one or the other, depending on the time of the day. You might want a little bit of light, but not completely blackout. Whereas nighttime, you might want completely blackout, completed by channels on the side of the window that the shade goes in between. So it's like seriously completely blacked out. So that's shades. So we talked about audio, video, lighting, shades. Next is Wi-Fi. This is probably what gets me in the door of most houses. Some people, again, very large houses, 10,000 square foot houses I'm working in sometimes. When you have a smaller home, like my little apartment here, I just use the internet service provider modem/router combo that has built-in Wi-Fi, and it's done with that. Next size up, for a larger house that needs a little bit more coverage, I often do an Eero system, which is good for do-it-yourself, but a big thing that I bring to the table is trying to utilize the wiring that's in a customer's house to hardwire every Eero device. So there's some math to that. I think they do, I don't know, like 2,000 square foot in a radius. But so again, you don't want access points too close, because the computer device or anything can get confused on which access point to jump onto. So if you space them out between floors and across the floor and try to get a hard wire, they all go back to where the internet comes into the house at the modem, and then they can plug into a switch there. That's what I do with that type of system. Beyond an Eero, again, is nice too, because they do a mesh type setting where if you don't have a hardwire to every device, hardwire everything that you can back to the main modem via a switch. But if you can't hardwire every device, you can use, just plug in one Eero for one part of the house that has no wires there, but you'll still be able to extend a smaller signal and make it bigger. It won't be quite as fast as a hardwired system, but they still work very nicely. So that's an Eero system. They make a bunch of others, Orbi, all kinds of different brands. I like Eero. I've been using them for a while, and they work pretty well. However, there are some, larger houses where you have a bunch of streaming devices. A lot of kids using everything all the time. Zoom calls, streaming music. Some people do video over IP. All kinds of when the system becomes more complex, you really need a purpose designed network, in which case I always do access networks. They can get very expensive, but they work very, very well for many years. And with that type of system, whenever I can, I have this is not access networks, but this, if I can pull out here, this is the type of access point. This one is Arachnus, and so this type of thing you could put on the ceiling where it would sit, and that type of thing is good to have in a room. There's exact math for that too, but so this is like a more professional type system where you have access points on the ceiling. They go back to a robust switch that does all the power and can try to hardwire everything else in the house. So that is really a professional type network. And people are doing day trading at home, stocks, all that kind of stuff, and a lot of Zoom meetings, working from home, a lot of users on the network. Eero starts to, if you're going past like 6 devices, I don't like to do that. And if you just have a more demanding system, then I'll do a more professional network with access networks. So that's Wi-Fi. Wiring, you'll see a common theme between shades, any AV stuff. Wi-Fi is just the wiring. That's a big discussion that I have to have with customers. Running wire in a house is very time consuming and can be expensive to, if you have fully closed up walls. There's ways to get wires to a fully, finished house. Much better if you're doing a renovation, to run new wires to do different things like that. A lot of people, people think that, okay, everything's wireless now. Even if you have a wireless device, wireless security camera, wireless access points, then you still need an outlet. So now you're beholden to wherever the electrical outlets are. So yeah, again, this is where my eyes, when I walk through a house, I can kind of give people a full layout of, you know, what kind of wiring do you have? Can we use some of that? Do we need to run new wires? You know, where that's needed. So yeah, if you're building a house though, make sure to wire it properly. Just to go into that, you want to pick a main location, garage, closet, basement, closet, where all these wires are going to go. You have to connect that with where the internet comes into the house, any services like that. Make sure it's ventilated because you're going to have equipment in there, so you don't want to enclose everything in a cabinet. It makes it very difficult to work on. It's too small a space and the heat builds up in there. But wiring considerations are TV locations. I'd like to run at least one coax RG6 and 2 Cat6 or more. I'll speak more about why you want that type of wire there, but look at wiring for TV locations, wireless access points in the ceiling, ideally, if you want to do that, but I understand a lot of people don't want to see an access point on the ceiling, even though, you know, they'll have a smoke detector by law. So I kind of make that argument, you know, put an access point on the ceiling, it'll work a lot better with the coverage. That's how they were designed. So wiring data jacks, where you might want to hardwire a computer into the wall. Speakers in ceiling is another thing. Pick those out if you're doing a pre-wire for a house. What else? Yeah, so there's all kinds of things to wire for, and that could be a whole separate video in and of itself. But just you know, have if you're remodeling your home, have somebody run wires that knows what they're doing with that. And yeah, so next thing, after Wi-Fi, cameras. I do a lot of cameras. With cameras, very simple, user-friendly thing is like Ring doorbells. Everybody's familiar with these. These come in different flavors too. You have a battery-operated one. You have to charge it after, I don't know, 5-6 months, something like that. And they work well. They're a little chunkier, bigger, bulkier looking on the outside of the door, but they get the job done. You have to recharge it. A very important thing for these types of Ring products, again, is your Wi-Fi coverage. So a lot of things, all roads lead back to the Wi-Fi system, the network in the house, because if that is not robust and good and strong signal, then you're not going to have a good time with your Ring camera system, because things are going to fall offline. It could be endlessly loading. So yeah, the Ring doorbells, you have a battery operated one. You have one that can replace existing doorbell button, and you could use those two wires that feed the doorbell to power a Ring, Pro doorbell. So those are nice, and then you don't have to worry about charging a battery. They're a little bit smaller form factor, and that's good. They make a third one called the Ring Doorbell Elite, and that is if you have a Cat 5, Cat 6 wire to the doorbell, which is what I would do in the event of a remodel or new construction. I would run that type of wire, because then you get a doorbell that could be recessed into the wall, into a typical one gang plate, like similar to an outlet or anything. And that would be hardwired to internet power over that one wire, and it would work really well for a long time. So that's Ring. The other Ring cameras you have, typically you could do a Ring stick-up camera Elite, which you can hardwire straight to the network and power it over that. You could do battery operated versions, which I haven't done much of those because people aren't getting on ladders to take a battery out of a camera that's somewhere outside of the house. So I try to run wires at minimum for hardwired electric. Floodlight cameras are really nice. You replace an existing floodlight and the camera works then with motion detector, and it's a light controlled from the app, and you get the camera. So those are very good for security, very easy to use in a Ring app, and they work nicely. There's one thing you have to consider: if you're replacing a floodlight camera with a Ring floodlight camera, you want it to have constant power. So that floodlight previously was on a timer or a wall switch somewhere. You now want to bypass that wall switch. So get an electrician or somebody that knows electric, and they're going to take out that switch, short the wires together so that the floodlight is not getting constant power, and that's a Ring system. Another camera system, I just went to a customer recently that had a break-in in the area that I live in Westchester. And somebody, they didn't have cameras. So he pre-wired for, he wants a full camera system to cover every angle of the house now. And we had the discussion between Ring versus a traditional system. A traditional system has an NVR, which stands for Network Video Recorder, And all the wires, they don't have to be home run for the cameras, but it's good to have that. You could just have them on the network. The benefit of having an NVR dedicated is that it has a hard drive. If you lose internet connection on the street, you're still recording that data. Whereas, I have to double check this actually, I don't think Ring, if it loses the cloud, if it doesn't have Wi-Fi, I don't think you're capturing the recordings. Another funny story too is, not funny story, but something to be aware of. Some criminals are getting very sophisticated where they bring a type of scrambler that will jam the signal of the Wi-Fi of a Ring camera when they pull up, so it's not recording anymore, and then steal a customer's car or something like that. So that has happened, whereas a hardwired camera system with IP cameras, that couldn't be done because it's hardwired and the NVR is down in the basement somewhere locked away. So downside with the NVR is that I think, in my opinion, the app is much more complicated to use. It's just it doesn't have the audio built in unless you get special cameras. It's just a lot of options, and it's not as simplified as the Ring to send you notifications and everything. So some brands I like are IC Real Time. Their engineers will design, cover an entire house to tell you which type of angle you're trying to get between far distance. They have some logic to how they choose the cameras of how far the distance is, medium, far, near, if you want to capture face identification, if you want to capture license plates. So there's a lot of thought to go into that. And back to the story of wires too, you need to get wires. Good to have, good for security. And so that's security cameras. Something to think about more for wiring. After cameras, I have hi-fi. Hi-fi listed on my business card. I have a lot of experience with doing, high quality, high-end stereo audio systems with brands like Wisdom Audio, Steinway Lingdorf, I already said Wisdom, B&O, Wilson, just Totem Acoustics, a lot of pretty high-end brands. I've set up many speakers that are $30,000 and up to $150,000 speaker systems, and they're very cool. They sound beautiful. Obviously, not for a regular person. Somebody this is a very, very high net worth individual can afford these things. Some of them will hold their value. Macintosh audio products are very cool, and these are for the audiophile or just somebody that wants something that's like a showpiece. It is an experience. I would recommend for anybody to try and listen to really high-end audio because you feel the music. It's like being at an opera if it's set up properly. It's like you're feeling. You could hear people's the instruments plucking every little detail in it, and it is beautiful. So you can do very much more affordable hi-fi systems as well. Just simple Sonos amp with a couple box speakers. You can have TV audio coming through that, and maybe a subwoofer, and you'll still get this to crank for, let's say, I would still expect to spend $2,500 on something like that. You could even go even less, but you'll still get the enjoyment of a hi-fi system. In addition to hi-fi, which I guess hi-fi is in the same category. I do multi-room audio a lot too, with control systems or just Sonos. So similar to cameras, you want to hardwire, put speakers in the ceiling. I like to line them up with the lights in the house, 16.4 speaker wire or 14.2. That's the gauge. You want to run a few of those. Be careful if you have your electrician do your speakers for you, because sometimes they're used to daisy chaining things. That's how electrical systems run. But with a hi-fi audio system, multi-room audio, you want to have separate wire for each speaker. I recommend doing 2 per room. For bigger rooms, sometimes you want to have even 4. And the point of more speakers is not just so it's so loud, it's so you could actually listen to the audio at a lower level and not have to crank it to get that nice low end feeling, or to cover the space properly. So I don't think it's overkill to do more speakers, bigger speakers. It actually sounds better, and you're not trying to overdrive some smaller, cheaper speakers that you could just find on Amazon, which you can do it yourself with that thing too. But do your research, because it's better to spend more money on high quality speakers, do the wiring right, and then have proper power at the back end. Sonos amps are good, super easy to use. I do a lot of them, and they can be very good. And then there's other audio systems, that can be done as well. Next on the line is theater, theater or media room. Not a lot of people can do a dedicated theater, but if you do, you got seating, you've got the projector, the screen and everything. So these can be very high price tags. A projector alone, you could spend between 10 and 50 grand on it, and you're getting what you pay for with those. They have beautiful projectors, and it's just a whole art form, theaters in itself. You have many companies that's all they do. So you could spend $1 million on a theater in your house if you're so inclined, so able to. So theaters are, a step down from that. You could do it yourself theater. Get some inexpensive seating, get a decent projector, Epson or something like that, Sony, and just do a big screen. And you want to do a nice Dolby Atmos system, so you need an AVR receiver. And I was going into, so like I did a customer's basement recently where they did a whole remodel, and they have a large 75-inch screen. Then they have a drop-down movie screen that comes down, and all the speakers are built into the wall, a projector's there, and it's almost like a theater, but we call it more of a media room, because right behind you, you've got a pool table, you've got other things there. There's no real sound treatment in there, so it's not a dedicated, it's just a big couch there, but it's still a theater effect with, that's more of a media room. Kids use that, they play Xbox and things on it, so that's a theater. And, those are the big things that I do in my company, and then I explain all the options to customers. These are all low voltage things. A lot of cool stuff. There's more that goes into it. And the next category I have is I do Crestron and Lutron that I mentioned already. Crestron touch panels, control systems, where you get everything on one app. You can turn on all your lights, lower shades, turn on music, control TVs, unlock doors, view cameras, adjust your pool, turn that on or off, adjust the HVAC in the house. So this is where it's difficult to do all of this without an actual control system like Savant or Crestron. My brother does Savant, I do Crestron, and we're, it takes a lot of work, a lot of patience for these things. Customers should realize too that when you put these things in your house, you have, you need a certain tolerance of how much electronics you can deal with, because there's so many moving parts that it's all working properly when we put it in, but a power outage happens, this happens, the internet goes down, different things. So you have to have an appetite for technology to put all this stuff in your house. But if it's done right and you have a good relationship with your integrator like me, then we'll make sure to keep your system running for a long time. So that's it. My name's Chase Penzenberg. My company is CWB Systems, and thank you for watching my video, and hopefully you got something out of it. Thanks.